All right, guys, and welcome back to another fabulous edition of our Advanced Math 2 lessons. So today we are going to be finishing up with Chapter 3 review. So that means we're going to be dealing with 3.4, which is your multiplying rational numbers, and go all the way to 3.6, which is putting all of those operations together. So adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing rational numbers. Now, if you remember last week on Friday, we did 3.1 to 3.3. where we reviewed quickly over what a rational number was and did some of the practice problems for adding or subtracting rational numbers. Remember, you're still following the rules that we dealt with regular integer operations. Now, with our multiplying and dividing, if we have the same sign, so that is plus plus or negative negative, that means my answer is going to be positive. Okay, now remember, if we have different signs, so that is plus negative, or just flipped around, negative plus, that means my answer is going to be negative. Okay, if you need a refresher on that, head back to our week 1 video where we went over the PowerPoint of multiplying and dividing integers. Now, we're going to go through some of the practice problems today that deal with multiplying and dividing, and then we're going to go ahead and put everything together with all of your operations. So let's go ahead and start with some multiplying problems. So I have a negative 2 times 3.1. Now, remember last week we talked about when we are adding or subtracting that our decimals need to line up. Now, that's not the case when we are multiplying. I can put them in whatever order, length, whatever it is that I want to. Still gonna get the same answer as long as I remember how many decimal places I started with. Okay, so to make this easier on myself, I'm going to just rearrange this to where they are stacked. So I'm gonna do a 3.1 times the negative 2. Now notice I did not put the negative here. I know just by looking at my problem, I'm dealing with a positive and a negative. So I automatically know that that answer I'm going to get at the end is a negative. Different signs, negative. So I'm going to do my 2 times 1, 2, 3 times 2, which is going to give me 6. Now I have to remember to add in this decimal into my answer. So out of the entire problem, I only dealt with 1 decimal space. So that means I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to put it right in between the 2. So my 3.1 times negative 2 is going to give me a negative 6.2. Okay? So let's do one more of those problems. Let's deal with one with some fractions. So we're going to do a negative 3 over 5. And I'm going to multiply that by a negative 10 over 3. Now remember, when we were adding or subtracting, we needed to have a common denominator. Again, that's not the case when we're multiplying. We don't have to worry about that. We can just multiply straight across. But remember, at the end, we need to simplify our fraction. So just by looking at my starting problem, I have a negative times a negative, which means that my answer is going to come out to be positive. So I'm not going to go ahead and put that sign because that's my invisible sign there. If I don't see anything, positive. So I'm going to do 3 times 10, which is going to give me a 30. 5 times 3 is going to give me 15. That's not simplified. I know that 15 can evenly go into 30 2 times. So that means that my answer is going to come out to be 2. Okay? Remember, these are all simple enough. This is a whole review for you guys. So nothing should really be new, but it's always good to review. So let's go ahead and go on to our dividing rational numbers, okay? So remember, it follows the same rules with if they have same sign, positive, different signs, negative. So I'm going to do 1/2 divided by a negative 3. So I have a positive divided by a negative, right? So that is going to give me a negative number. So I'm going to go ahead and put my negative sign here. Now, remember that, let me go ahead and bring this up a little bit. All right, so remember that when we're dividing fractions specifically, we have that wonderful thing you guys like to say is your keep, change, flip. That means that I'm going to keep the first fraction the way that it is. So I'm going to bring that, let me go ahead and erase this right here real quick. We're going to bring the 1/2 down. I'm going to now change this division sign to a multiplication sign. Okay? And this -3 is now going to become what? Right? It's going to be a -1/3. Remember, guys, that whenever we see a whole number in fraction form, it's always over 1. Okay? So now I'm going to follow my multiplication rules, and I'm going to multiply just straight across. So I have 1 times 1. That's going to give me 1. 2 times 3 is going to give me 6. And I had to remember that my answer is going to be a -1/6. Okay? Now, let's do an example where we're dividing decimals. Okay, because we can't forget that key thing when we're dividing decimals. Let me find an example, okay? So we are gonna do 4.2 divided by a -2.4, okay? So let's go ahead and take this negative away. I know that since I'm doing a positive divided by a negative, my answer is gonna come out to be negative in the end, so I'll bring that back when we're done. So I need to first, yep, you guessed it, move this decimal over 1. So I'm going to erase that here and put it right after the 4. So what I do to this outside number, I also have to do that to the number inside the house. So I'm going to move that 1 decimal place. Remember that this number inside only moves however many you moved on the outside. So if I move 2 on the outside, I need to move 2 on the inside. If I move 3 on the outside, I need to move 3 on the inside, regardless of whatever number's here. So now I got to look at it as how many times can 24 go into 42? I know that it can go in once, which gives me 24. It can't go in twice because then that would give me 48. So I'm going to put the 1. Bring the 24 here, go ahead and subtract. So 12 minus 4 is going to give me 8. 3 minus 2 gives me 1. I'm going to add a 0 here and bring it on down. So be careful, okay? Because you see how this decimal's here? I want to also make sure that I reflect it up into my answer. So now I have to see how many times can 24 go into 180. Okay, so let's think. If I have, let's say, let's do it 6 times. 6 times 4 is going to give me 24. 6 times 2 gives me 12, and that gives me 14. I feel like I can still do more. So why don't we go ahead and do 7? That's going to give me 28, sorry. And then 14, add 2 more, that gives me 16. That looks a little bit closer to me. So I'm going to put 7, and I have 168. Go ahead and do my borrowing again. That gives me 2, that gives me 1, and those give me 0. I can still keep going, so I'm going to add another wonderful 0 down here. So if I notice here, 24 times 6 gave me 144. Why don't I do 24 times 5? This is why you always want to keep your work somewhere. That way you're not redoing a lot of the work. So I'm going to do my 24 times 5. 4 times 5 is going to give me 20. 5 times 2 gives me 10. Add another 2. Boom, 120. So there we go. I can add that 5 up here. And down here at the bottom, I now have a remainder of 0. I've solved here. But what did we remember at the beginning? This was a negative 2.4. This was a positive 4.2. Means my answer is going to be a negative number. All right, so we are going to do one problem here just for applying our rational number operations. Okay, so this is 3.6. So we're going to take kind of everything into 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read a problem out and we'll work on it together. Sections of prefabricated fencing are each 4 1/3 feet long. How long are 6.5 sections placed end to end? So that means that if each section is 4 1/3, and I want to know how many 6 1/2 are, yeah, I'm going to need to multiply. Okay? So for me, personally, you do it however you want to. Makes it easier for me if I change these into improper fractions and then revert back. Yeah, it seems like a lot, I know, but it makes it easier for me. So this here becomes 13 over 3. This becomes 13 over 2. All right, so I'm going to do 13 times 13, which, let me do that off to the side. That gives me 169. And 3 times 2 gives me the 6. Now I'm going to do 169 divided by 6 to see how many times I can actually get that in there. So I'm going to do that off to the side on my handy dandy calculator. So I'm going to do 169. I'm going to divide that by 6. So that gives me 28 whole pieces. Now, how many do I have left over? That means I have 1 left over. So looking at that, those 6.5 pieces that are each 4 1/3 feet long are going to come out to give me 28 1/6 feet of fencing. Okay? So just remember that you need to carefully read those problems that are dealing with your rational number operations, because it's not always going to be so easy for you to determine if it's multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So you really need to look for those keywords. So you need to look for together, as a whole, each, sum, difference, quotient. All of those wonderful words that we've talked about year after year are going to help you determine what operation you're actually doing in those problems, okay? So again, this is just a reminder. Office hours, 9 to 9:15, every single fabulous morning, okay? So if you need to talk to me, you need a question answered, anything at all, I'm there. If you need a time other than my regular office hours with you guys, go ahead and either send me a meeting request or email me, and we'll put something in the books for a different time, okay? All right, guys, have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you later. Bye.